The patient who never left. In hospitals, people arrive sick and they leave healed. But what happens when someone enters and never comes out? It's 2017, Lagos, Nigeria. At the sprawling Lagos University Teaching Hospital, known to most as LUTH, a young patient named Emmanuel Olson checks in for what should have been a routine neurological test. Security cameras record him entering the ward. Nurses confirm his admission. Doctors log his chart, and then he disappears. No discharge papers, no transfer forms, not even a trace of him leaving the building. For days, his family pleads for answers. Hospital officials claim there's been a recording error. Police suggest he walked out unnoticed. But when investigators review the surveillance tapes, something strange happens. The footage freezes at the exact moment Emmanuel walks past the nurse's desk. Then the file deletes itself. As whispers spread among staff, the hospital grows silent. One nurse resigns suddenly. A janitor refuses to clean the lower ward at night. And in a place meant to save lives, fear begins to take root. Was this a kidnapping? A cover-up? Or something far darker, hidden beneath years of institutional secrecy? As you'll discover in this investigation, Emmanuel's story isn't just about one missing man. It's about how truth disappears when power protects itself, and how silence becomes the perfect accomplice to crime. So before we dive deeper into this true case, I need your help. Like this video, share it with others who believe the truth deserves to be seen, and subscribe. Because what you're about to hear may one day vanish from the record too. It's a humid evening in Lagos, Nigeria, 2017. The corridors of Lagos University Teaching Hospital, known simply as LUTH, are filled with the familiar hum of life and death. Patients whisper prayers, nurses rush between wards, and the smell of disinfectant hangs heavy in the air. At 8:42 p.m., a middle-aged man named Emmanuel Oak, we'll use a placeholder name, is admitted to the emergency ward. He's suffering from what appears to be a mild respiratory infection. Doctors assure his family it's nothing serious, a few nights under observation, and he'll be fine. He's placed in Ward C, a mid-level room shared by other recovering patients. CCTV cameras line the hall, guards patrol the exits, and sign-in sheets record every visitor. Nothing seems out of place, but this would be the last time Emmanuel's family would see him alive. By 10:15 p.m., the nurses finish their rounds. Emmanuel is awake, reportedly reading his Bible. At 11:40 p.m., a nurse returns. The bed is empty. No noise, no disturbance, no sign of a struggle. Just gone. The security footage? Missing. The nurse's logs? Altered. And when his wife rushes to the hospital the next morning, she's told something that chills her blood. "Ma'am, your husband has been discharged." But no one signed his discharge papers. His personal items, wallet, phone, wristwatch, are still there. And when she demands answers, the hospital staff grow nervous. Some even avoid her eyes. It's the beginning of a nightmare, one that would unravel one of the most disturbing disappearances ever recorded in a Nigerian hospital. In this story, we're not looking at a criminal hiding in the shadows of Lagos. We're looking at a system, one that failed, concealed, and possibly covered up what happened behind those sterile white walls. This isn't fiction. This is real life. And tonight, we reopen the case of the patient who never left. If you're just joining us, make sure you hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell so you don't miss the shocking details that follow. Every view, every comment helps us uncover more forgotten truths and give a voice to the silenced. The search begins. The morning after Emmanuel's mysterious disappearance, confusion grips LUTH's Ward C. The nurses whisper, trying to piece together what happened. By 6 a.m., the nurse in charge realizes that the bed in the far corner, the one marked bed 14, is empty. His Ford drip still hangs half full. His chart remains untouched. His personal items, shoes, phone, Bible, lie neatly arranged. At first, it's assumed he simply went for a walk. But by mid-morning, the panic sets in. The hospital's internal security sweeps the premises. Every hallway, restroom, and even a morgue. Nothing. When Emmanuel's wife, Grace, arrives around 10 a.m. She's greeted by a scene of denial and disorganization. "Your husband must have discharged himself," one administrator says casually. But the documents tell a different story. No record of discharge, no doctor's authorization, and no witness who saw him leave. Frustrated, Grace demands to see the CCTV footage. That's when the story takes a chilling turn. The hospital's head of security admits that the camera in Ward C wasn't working that night. Coincidence or cover-up? Later, Grace files an official missing person report with the Lagos State Police Command. The hospital provides a statement, cold and detached. The patient was last seen around 11 p.m. He may have wandered off. We are cooperating with the authorities. But as days turn into weeks, inconsistencies multiply. Witnesses contradict each other. Some claim to have seen a man matching Emmanuel's description near the back gate around midnight. Others insist that the gates were locked all night. The truth becomes harder to find. Every piece of evidence seems to disappear into the same void that swallowed Emmanuel himself. Behind closed doors, a few doctors whisper theories, some too dark to repeat publicly. One hints at medical negligence. Another suggests organ theft, a growing criminal enterprise in parts of Nigeria's healthcare system. But officially, silence. Grace begins her own investigation, turning into an unwilling detective. Her mission, to find out whether her husband left that hospital alive or was erased within its walls. What began as a medical case is now a criminal mystery. And those who know the truth seem determined to keep it buried. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your engagement helps bring visibility to stories that powerful institutions would rather keep in the dark. Shadows in the corridors. The investigation into Emmanuel's disappearance begins officially, at least. But inside the halls of Lagos University Teaching Hospital, truth moves slower than rumor. Everyone is talking, yet no one is saying anything. The timeline of vanishing investigators retrace Emmanuel's final known hours. At 8:42 p.m., a nurse recorded administering his medication. At 9:30 p.m., another nurse remembers checking his vitals. All stable. At 10:15 p.m., a patient in the next bed claims he heard Emmanuel murmuring prayers. And by 11 p.m., silence. Between 11 and midnight, something happened that erased a man from existence. The hallway camera near Ward C, which should have captured every movement, went offline for exactly 67 minutes. When it came back, the feed showed an empty bed and a flickering light. That's all. The missing files as police request patient records. A strange thing occurs. Emmanuel's medical file is missing. No digital entry. No physical copy. The hospital's IT department claims it was archived for system maintenance. But when pressed further, the administrator responsible for backups resigns unexpectedly 2 days later. When Grace visits to demand answers, she's told the file will resurface soon. It never does. The doctor's silence. Then there's Dr. Chukwuma, Emmanuel's attending physician. He avoids questions, insists the patient was progressing well, and then abruptly takes a leave of absence. Whispers among the staff suggest he had a private disagreement with hospital management shortly before Emmanuel disappeared. Another rumor hints that he'd been treating more than one identity under the same hospital ID. What could that possibly mean? The night guard's testimony finally. The case cracks open slightly when a security guard, identified only as Ojo, comes forward. He says he saw a man in a white gown walking toward the restricted corridor near the old surgical wing around 11:45 p.m. When asked if it was Emmanuel, he hesitates. "I think it was him, but something about his face looked wrong, like he wasn't awake." Moments later, the lights flickered, and when Ojo looked again, the corridor was empty. Fear within the walls. By now, the hospital staff speak in lower tones. Some refuse to work the night shift in Ward C. Patients start requesting transfers. One nurse, visibly shaken, tells Grace quietly he didn't leave. He was taken. What does that mean? By whom? And why? The questions swirl like the echoing hum of hospital machines, endless, eerie, and unanswered. It's becoming clear Emmanuel's disappearance isn't just a crime. It's part of something much larger. Soft, ambient tone fades under narration. Whatever happened that night in Ward C, the truth is still there, hiding in the shadows, waiting for someone brave enough to look closer. If this story has your mind spinning, hit like, share, and subscribe. Every click helps uncover what really happened in that hospital room and keeps these stories alive. The restricted wing, the next stage of Grace's search, leads her into the heart of the hospital, a place most staff pretend doesn't exist, the old surgical wing. The locked door, it's an abandoned section, closed years ago after a fire incident in 2003. Officially, it's unsafe, faulty wiring, structural weakness, risk of collapse. Unofficially, it's where rumors say the forgotten patients are kept. When Grace first hears of it from an older nurse, the woman's voice trembles. If your brother walked that way, pray for his soul. The hallway leading there is narrow, lined with dust-covered doors and flickering bulbs. A no-entry sign dangles by one screw. Grace manages to get near the door one evening, escorted by a sympathetic orderly, but it's padlocked shut. Still, she swears she hears faint sound from the other side. Metal scraping, soft breathing, then silence. The record that shouldn't exist days later. A small discovery changes everything. A medical student intern, brave or foolish, sneaks into the hospital archive and finds a partially burnt folder marked Ward C, Transfer Log, March 2017. Inside, Emmanuel's name appears next to an entry that reads only, Transfer to Wing E, clearance pending. But there is no Wing E in any hospital blueprint. When Grace confronts the administration, they insist it must be a clerical error. The intern is dismissed the next day. Grace begins to suspect she's being watched. The hidden corridor one rainy night, Grace returns with a flashlight and courage. A janitor, who has worked there for decades, quietly leads her to an alternate route, a half-sealed maintenance shaft that connects to the old surgical wing. As they crawl through, the air grows cold and stale. The deeper they go, the more recent the footprints appear. And then she finds them. Patient tags. 5 of them, each with names of people listed as discharged, but whose families claim never to have seen them again. Among them, Emmanuel's tag, stained, faded, and warm to the touch. The whispered tape, the following morning, Grace receives an unmarked envelope slipped under her door. Inside is a flash drive containing audio. A voice, hoarse, trembling, says, if you're listening to this, they know you're looking. Ward E isn't a place. It's a procedure. Then static. Then a faint moan. It ends abruptly. No sender. No trace. Fear spreads, word spreads fast through the hospital. Patients begin refusing treatments, terrified by whispers of the ghost ward. Nurses cry during night shifts. And the hospital board suddenly issues a memo. All staff are reminded to refrain from unauthorized investigation into ongoing cases. But for Grace, that only means one thing. The truth is real enough to be dangerous. And she's not backing down. The deeper we look, the stranger it gets. If you want to uncover what really lies inside those hospital walls, make sure you like this video, share it, and subscribe because the truth might be hiding in the next chapter. Ward E, the ghost unit. If Ward E isn't a place, then what is it? The words echo in Grace's mind as she stares at the hospital map. Every floor, every wing, labeled and documented. Except one. A blank rectangle between the old surgical theater and the pathology lab, sealed off decades ago. But something about that void feels alive. The search for the ghost ward Grace returns under cover of night. A small camera strapped to her chest. The maintenance shaft she used before has been welded shut. Someone knew she was there. But this time, she's not alone. The janitor, Musa, meets her in the shadows. He's trembling, but he carries a heavy ring of keys, the kind that open doors most have forgotten. Musa, people think this hospital sleeps, but at night, it breathes. As they reach the end of the west corridor, Musa stops at an unmarked door, plain metal, faint hum behind it. He inserts a key and whispers, if you hear crying, don't answer. The door swings open. Inside Wardy, the air is cold, sterile, yet heavy. Dust coats old surgical lights, but the smell is recent, disinfectant, and iron. Rows of beds line the walls, draped in plastic sheets. And then Grace sees them. 4 poles, tubes still connected, labels peeled off. On a counter, she finds a file dated March 2017, the same month Emmanuel vanished. It reads, Experimental Observation. Phase 2, Extended Sedation. The file lists 5 subjects. 4 are marked terminated. 1 is in progress. That last name? Emmanuel Okoro. Grace's knees weaken. Her brother didn't die. He was used. The footage that shouldn't exist. Grace plays the camera's recording later that night. At first, it's just static, but then a faint figure appears. A patient, motionless, hooked to multiple machines. The tag reads E. Okoro. But suddenly, the figure's head moves, eyes open, staring directly into the camera. Grace drops the device. When she replays the footage, the bed is empty. She replays it again and again. Same thing. He was there, then gone. The cover-up deepens. The next morning, the hospital is in chaos. Security sweeps every floor, confiscating electronic devices. Doctors refuse to speak. Musa is gone, and Grace receives a text from an unknown number. Leave Lagos now. You're next on the list. But she refuses. Instead, she leaks the footage anonymously online, and within hours, it spreads like wildfire. The headline reads, Ghost Patients? Secret experiment allegations rock Lagos Hospital. The government dismisses it as deep-fake propaganda. The hospital releases a statement denying all knowledge. But the public? They're not convinced. A terrifying discovery. Days later, a mass grave is discovered near the hospital compound. 5 unmarked bodies, buried under concrete during renovation. DNA tests confirm 4 as former patients. The 5th? Incomplete, unidentified, but estimated to have died around 2017. Grace believes it's Emmanuel. But one thing doesn't make sense. The autopsy shows he'd only been dead a week before discovery. That means he'd been alive for years after he vanished. The question that haunts. As Grace kneels by the burial site, rain pouring down, she whispers, if they could keep him alive all this time, who else is still here? Her eyes drift toward the hospital windows. For a moment, just a split second, she swears she sees a silhouette staring down. And it looks exactly like her brother. Grace has found more than she ever expected. But this story isn't over. What would you do if someone you loved vanished inside a hospital, and the walls themselves were hiding the truth? Stay with us. Hit that like button, share this story, and subscribe, because the next chapter will uncover what the hospital never wanted the world to see. The experiment room. There's a difference between saving lives and playing God. The story takes a darker turn. What began as a missing person case has now spiraled into a horrifying revelation. One that questions not just ethics, but reality itself. The secret beneath the hospital. Grace's leaked footage spreads across social media like wildfire. Within days, whistleblowers start coming forward. A former nurse named Ifeoma, voice trembling through a distorted audio call, tells her story. There's a ward below the morgue, a place that didn't exist on paper. They called it Project Lazarus. Patients were sedated, monitored, and sometimes reawakened. Grace asks what reawaken means. The line goes silent. Then, they didn't come back the same. Project Lazarus. Digging deeper, Grace finds records linked to foreign research grants, supposedly funding neurological regeneration. But there's a problem. The grant was terminated in 2016, 1 year before Emmanuel vanished. So who continued it? A leaked memo from an anonymous insider reads, Objective: suspend consciousness to observe biological persistence. The subject must remain between states, alive, yet not awake. The subjects weren't dying. They were being trapped. The return to Ward E. Determined to find proof, Grace sneaks back into the hospital under the chaos of an ongoing power outage. This time, she's live streaming. The corridors are darker, wires hanging loose, medical charts scattered like forgotten evidence. As she approaches Ward E, the metal door stands half open. Inside, machines still hum. The beds are gone, replaced by cold steel tables. In the center of the room, a massive cylindrical tank, half filled with murky liquid. A faint shape floats inside. Grace moves closer, her flashlight trembling. It's a human figure, eyes open, face pale, suspended in silence. For a moment, she thinks it's Emmanuel. But then the eyes move, and the face isn't his. The call. Her phone vibrates. Unknown number. She answers, voice whispering on the other end. You were told to leave. Who is this? Grace demands. He's not gone, Grace. He's awake. Then static. The lights flicker. When she looks back, the tank is empty. The vanishing file. The following morning, Grace uploads her new footage. But minutes later, it's deleted, not flagged, not taken down, just erased. Her backup drives, wiped clean. Emails vanish. Even her earlier viral video disappears from all platforms simultaneously. She checks her camera. The SD card is intact, but all the files are black screens. Only one remains visible. A single still image of her brother, smiling faintly, time-stamped 2 hours in the future. The last visit. Days later, she receives an anonymous message. Come alone if you want to see him. The location? The old isolation wing, closed since 1999. She goes. Inside, the air is heavy with formaldehyde. A single light flickers in the corner. On the wall, a message scrawled in red marker. He never left. Footsteps echo behind her. She turns and sees a patient gown hanging mid-air, as if worn by someone invisible. The heart monitor in the corner starts beeping, then stops. The truth they tried to erase. The Ministry of Health denies everything. Hospital management resigns within days. The site is under renovation. Security doubled. But the whispers persist. Locals say they still see lights flickering in the abandoned ward. Janitors claim to hear heart monitors beeping when no machines are there. And sometimes, they swear they see a man walking the hallways at night, barefoot, wearing a patient tag that reads Iokoro. Grace may have uncovered the experiment, but the truth is far from over. What happens when a place meant to heal becomes a prison for the soul? If this story grips you, hit that like button, share it with someone who loves a good mystery, and subscribe for the next chapter, where we explore whether Project Lazarus really ended or simply moved. The Survivor. Sometimes, the only thing more terrifying than death is surviving it. The investigation takes a shocking turn when Grace receives an anonymous message that simply reads, You're not the only one looking. Attached is a name, Dr. Femi Adesina, a neurologist who worked at Lagos University Teaching Hospital during the period Emmanuel vanished. According to the message, Dr. Adesina had been in hiding ever since he spoke out about patients who died twice. Tracking the whistleblower, Grace travels miles outside Lagos to a remote fishing town along the Badagry coastline. There, in a small, derelict clinic surrounded by overgrown weeds, she finds him. Older now, weary, his eyes heavy with guilt. He knows why she's there. Dr. Adesina, you're looking for Emmanuel. I know that name. Grace, then tell me what happened. He takes a deep breath, the weight of years pressing on every word. You think your brother was the only one? We lost track of how many went missing. But one of them came back. The man who woke up. He describes a patient known only as Subject 17, a middle-aged man who had been declared brain dead after a severe cardiac event. But during an experiment to measure post-mortem neural activity, the man regained consciousness. He woke up screaming, Dr. Adesina whispers. He said he saw the doctors watching from behind the glass. But they weren't trying to save him. They were timing him. The patient's vitals stabilized, yet his mind was fractured. He kept repeating the same phrase. The light wasn't heaven. It was a hallway, and I couldn't find the door. Within 48 hours, Subject 17 vanished from his room. No security footage. No discharge records. Just an empty bed and the faint imprint of a body that had been there. The theory. Dr. Adesina reveals what he believes happened. They found a way to interrupt death, not reverse it, just delay it. But the mind can't stay in that limbo for long. When it returns, it brings something else back with it. He explains that those who were part of Project Lazarus often complained of hearing voices, echoes, whispers, and memories that didn't belong to them. A few even described seeing themselves standing beside their own beds. Grace listens, her face pale, her recorder still running. Grace, you're saying my brother might have been part of that experiment? Dr. Adesina, he wasn't part of it. He was the last one. The hidden files. Dr. Adesina hands Grace a faded folder. Inside are blurred photographs of hospital equipment, syringe labels, and an old clipboard with Emmanuel's name circled in red ink. There's also a single image of the hospital basement, the same area Grace had visited, but in the photo, it's filled with beds, not machines. On one of the beds lies Emmanuel, eyes closed, electrodes attached to his head. The timestamp reads February 18th, 2017, 2 weeks after he went missing. They moved the program underground, Dr. Adesina mutters. After I spoke up, I was told to disappear. So I did. But they're still there. They never stopped. The survivor's mark. Grace notices a thin scar on the back of Dr. Adesina's neck. A surgical line almost identical to the one Emmanuel had after his first hospital admission. She asks him about it. He stiffens. I was a patient once, he says quietly, before I was a doctor. The revelation hits like a thunderclap. The whistleblower, the man revealing the truth, was also one of them. He looks at her with eyes full of despair. You want to know what happened to your brother? You'll have to go back. But if you do, don't look into the mirrors. The interruption. Before Grace can ask more, a deafening sound echoes outside. The screech of tires, followed by a low hum. A black van pulls up. Men in lab coats step out, but their badges don't bear any hospital logo. Dr. Adesina grabs Grace's arm, thrusts a USB stick in her hand. This has everything. Don't lose it. Then the doors burst open. The camera cuts to chaos. Grace running through the dark woods, breath heavy, the van's headlights cutting through the fog behind her. A single gunshot echoes. Then silence. The vanished doctor. The next morning, Grace tries calling Dr. Adesina. His phone is dead. She drives back to the clinic. It's burned to the ground. Only ashes remain. Among the ruins, a melted metal nameplate lies half buried in the dirt. Dr. F. Adesina, Neurology Department. And that's when she realizes she was never supposed to find him alive. Grace now holds the only remaining evidence of Project Lazarus, and possibly the truth behind her brother's fate. But with every step she takes, someone seems determined to erase her next move. If this story chills you, like this video to help us reach others who follow true mysteries, share it so more people see what the world tried to bury, and subscribe for Chapter 8, where Grace decodes the final file and faces what may no longer be human. The Lazarus Files. Truth has a strange habit of surviving, even when the people who hold it do not. The USB drive. Back at her apartment, Grace sits alone, the USB stick trembling in her hand. The city hums outside, but her room feels suffocatingly quiet, like the air itself is waiting. She plugs it in. A folder opens. LZ enters her archive, last modified March 3rd, 2017. Inside are subfolders labeled only by numbers, 01 through 09. Each one contains photos, clinical notes, and audio recordings with cryptic titles like phase transition, subject loss, and echo response. The first recording. Grace clicks play. A shaky black and white video begins. A dim hospital room with a patient strapped to a bed. Electrodes cover his chest and temples. A faint voice narrates, monotone, detached. Research log 02. Time of death, 2:47 a.m. Neural activity persists for 11 minutes postmortem. Subject exhibiting intermittent motor function. Then the patient moves. Not a twitch, but a deliberate turn of the head, eyes opening toward the camera. Grace freezes. The voice continues. Motor reflex response recorded. Possible cognitive retention beyond death threshold. The screen glitches, and, for a single frame, the patient's mouth moves. No audio. But when Grace pauses and zooms in, she can read the lips clearly. The word is help. The Lazarus procedure. Another file reveals typed notes written by Dr. Adesina himself. Objective: to determine if electrical stimulation can sustain limited brain function after cardiac cessation. Progress: neural patterns persist longer than expected. Complication: subjects experience intrusive hallucinations and self-recognition failure. Observation: one patient spoke my name before their heart resumed beating. Grace scrolls further. The words grow increasingly unstable. Phrases overwritten. Margins filled with frantic scribbles. They see themselves. Consciousness doesn't want to stay. Someone else answers when they wake up. Hospital blueprints. Among the files is a set of scanned blueprints of Lagos University Teaching Hospital. But there's something strange. A sublevel not listed in any public record. It's labeled only as Ward 9B, directly beneath the morgue. There's also a time-stamped photograph from inside. A long, windowless corridor, fluorescent lights flickering, walls smeared with what looks like ash or mold. At the far end, a figure in a patient gown, standing perfectly still. When Grace enhances the photo, the facial outline looks eerily like Emmanuel. The Forgotten Call. Grace plays one final file, a low-quality audio recording. At first, only static. Then a voice, faint and distorted. If you're hearing this, they're still alive. Not as themselves, but alive. Then a woman screams in the background. A metallic clang. Then silence. When Grace replays the file, she realizes the voice wasn't random. It was her own brother. The basement return. Armed with this new evidence, Grace decides to return to the hospital, despite warnings, despite the fear. She sneaks through the old maintenance tunnels and descends toward Ward 9B. Her flashlight cuts through thick darkness. The deeper she goes, the colder the air becomes. At the end of the hallway, she finds a rusted steel door marked Authorized Personnel Only. She pushes it open and freezes. Rows of hospital beds, each covered with plastic sheeting. Monitors still hum with power. And on one of the beds lies a figure, familiar, motionless. Her breath catches. It's Emmanuel. The reawakening. Grace approaches, shaking. His chest rises barely. She reaches out, whispers, "Emmanuel, it's me." His eyes snap open. For a heartbeat, they look human. Then the pupils dilate, black as ink. A faint smile creeps across his face. "You came back," he whispers. "Just like they said you would." The lights flicker violently. Machines start beeping all at once. Grace stumbles back as Emmanuel sits up, wires detaching from his skin like veins snapping. "They said you'd come to finish it," he says again. "But it's not over. It never ends." The power cuts out. Darkness swallows everything. The final revelation. The next thing Grace remembers is waking up in the hospital lobby, morning sunlight pouring through the glass doors. No one believes her story. The files on the USB are corrupted. Dr. Adesina's clinic never existed. But one thing remains on her recorder. Emmanuel's voice whispering through static. "I'm still here." And the timestamp? 2019, 2 years after his disappearance. If this story sent chills through you, remember, truth hides in plain sight, and sometimes hospitals hold more than life. Help us uncover more hidden truths. Like this video to support deeper investigations. Share it to keep these stories alive, and subscribe to stay with us as we head into Chapter 9, where the line between medicine and resurrection finally breaks. Project Lazarus. Some secrets aren't buried. They're institutionalized. The return to LUTH. Days after her last ascent into Ward 9B, Grace makes her way back to the hospital. Not as a sister in mourning, but as an investigator determined to expose what really happened. She's exhausted, paranoid, but resolute. She notices something new. The corridor where she last saw Emmanuel is now sealed with reinforced concrete. The plaque reads, "Restricted Maintenance Zone." It's as if the hospital is pretending that entire wing never existed. But Grace isn't the only one who remembers. The records office. She heads to the records department, a dusty, half-forgotten archive room where files are stacked floor to ceiling. An elderly clerk, Mr. Salami, recognizes her surname immediately. "Olson? You're not related to that patient from Ward C, are you?" Grace nods slowly. You shouldn't be here, he mutters. That file, it's red flagged. When he hesitates, Grace slides a folded envelope of Naira across the counter. The man sighs, looks around nervously, and retrieves a thick folder from a locked drawer. Stamped across the front, Project Lazarus, Confidential. The file that shouldn't exist. Inside are documents referencing human subject trials approved under a medical grant that never passed national ethics review. The principal investigator? Dr. Michael Adesina. But the most disturbing discovery is a roster of 13 names, all tagged status, unresolved. Every one of them listed as patients who died in hospital care but never had a body released. Emmanuel's name is the last on the list. Next to it, handwritten in black ink. Subject retained, Phase 3 ongoing. The date? April 12, 2019. 2 years after he disappeared. The security footage. Grace insists on viewing surveillance archives from that same week. After hours of pleading and paperwork, she's granted 5 minutes of supervised access. The grainy black and white footage plays, hallways, wards, nurses at their stations. Nothing unusual. Then, at 3:14 a.m., a power fluctuation darkens the feed for exactly 17 seconds. When it comes back, a lone figure in a patient gown walks down the hall, barefoot, dragging an 4-pole. The camera autofocuses just long enough to reveal the face. It's Emmanuel, 2 years after he vanished. He turns toward the camera and smiles. The feed abruptly cuts to static. No one filed an incident report. The Insider. Grace finally tracks down a former hospital orderly, Amaka Odi, who left LUTH the same month Emmanuel disappeared. Amaka refuses to speak at first, but when Grace plays her the distorted audio from the USB, she freezes. "That's the basement," she whispers. "We called it the cold room. I saw things there I'll never forget." Amaka describes patients brought in after clinical death. Their bodies connected to electrical rigs, their brains monitored by analog EEG machines. She said some of them woke up. They would open their eyes and scream, but it wasn't their voice, she says. They would look at us like they didn't know who we were, or who they were. The funding trail. Grace's final lead takes her to a research institute in Abuja that supposedly co-funded Adesina's post-neural study. She confronts the director, Dr. Chukwu, who denies any involvement. But when she mentions Lazarus, his expression falters. "That project was never meant to leave the lab," he mutters. "It was about brain cell persistence. But someone turned it into something else." He hands her a single flash drive before walking away. "If you're smart, you'll destroy it." The file name. When Grace opens the drive later that night, there's only one file, no documents, no photos, just a looping video. The file name. Patient 001_Emmanuel_restore.mp4. The video is 12 seconds long. A hospital room, empty, then a faint rustle as someone walks in a frame. Emmanuel. He looks straight into the lens. "They said I'd never leave," he whispers. They were right. Then the screen goes black. The next morning, Grace submits every file, photo, and testimony to investigative journalists. 2 days later, she's found unconscious in her apartment, alive but unable to speak. The flash drive is missing. And within 24 hours, the hospital issues a press release denying all allegations, claiming no patient by the name Emmanuel Olsen ever existed. But those who worked in the hospital remember his face. And sometimes, when the night ward grows quiet, nurses still swear they hear footsteps echoing from the basement, even though Ward 9B was sealed years ago. If stories like this leave your heart racing, remember, silence protects no one. Like this video if you believe hidden truths deserve light. Share it to keep the mystery alive, and subscribe to join us as we enter Chapter 10, where we uncover what really happened to the patient who never left. The patient files. Sometimes finding the truth means becoming part of it. A quiet return. Weeks pass after Grace's collapse. Her friends think she's recovering from exhaustion. But behind her calm smile, something is different. Her eyes linger too long on shadows. She avoids mirrors. And at night, Her phone flashes with an unknown number, no caller ID, just a voice whispering, "We know you remember." Grace deletes the messages, but they return every time she powers on her phone. Each time, the voice sounds more familiar, more like Emmanuel. The reopened case. An independent journalist, LUTH, begins publishing leaked files under the headline, LUTH Experiment Exposed, The Lazarus Project Lives. The reports ignite a wave of online outrage, demanding justice for the missing patients. Government agencies promise a full inquiry. But within a week, Tolu's website goes offline. His social media accounts vanish. His last post reads simply, "They're not done." Grace realizes that exposing the truth might not save anyone. It might only expand the silence. Residual echoes. Her recovery doctor, Dr. Bello, begins to suspect neurological trauma. But the scans reveal something impossible. A faint electrical pattern repeating across her prefrontal cortex, like a signal. A sequence. When he compares it to archived EEG readings from Emmanuel's trial, the patterns match perfectly. "It's like a shared signature," he whispers. "Grace, are you sure you haven't been to that basement again?" Grace insists she hasn't. But every night, she dreams of fluorescent lights flickering, of cold metal tables, and of Emmanuel whispering, "You were there too." The file reappears. Late one night, her laptop powers on by itself. A folder appears on the desktop, patient_files. Inside, names, photos, and clinical notes on all that disappeared. At the bottom of the list, a new file has been added. Grace and Olson #hashtag 14_status_pending. Her hands shake as she clicks it open. A video begins to play. The same cold room she's seen in her dreams. She's there, strapped to a table, eyes closed. Electrodes on her temples. A monitor beside her reads a single line of text. Subject recovered successfully. She shuts the laptop, trembling. Her reflection in the dark screen smiles back, but she doesn't. The statement that never was. The next morning, Grace goes to the Federal Criminal Investigation Department with her files, her recordings, and what's left of her sanity. But at the security gate, the officer looks confused. "Madam, there's no appointment under your name. No record at all." She insists. She opens her folder, but every page is blank. The USB drive she carried is empty. It's as though someone wiped every trace of the investigation. In her mind, a quiet whisper echoes again. "You said you'd never leave." The basement lives. Meanwhile, construction crews working near the old hospital wing accidentally breach a sealed tunnel. Inside, they find medical equipment still humming faintly, and a row of patient beds perfectly preserved. On one of them lies a man with a hospital tag, E. Olson. When the team reports the find, they're told to leave the area immediately. The next day, the tunnel is resealed. No official report is ever filed. The broadcast that shouldn't exist. That night, a local TV channel experiences a sudden broadcast interruption. For exactly 1 minute and 44 seconds, a grainy feed hijacks the signal, showing a dim hospital ward, heart monitors, and muffled breathing. Then a voice says, "We are still here." The signal cuts. No station admits responsibility. But those who recorded it notice a logo at the corner of the screen. LUTH Research Unit 7, a division that on record was dissolved in 2018. Grace vanishes 2 days later. Her apartment is untouched. Her phone lies on the table, the screen glowing faintly with a text message draft that was never sent. They never die. They just wait. The police list her as missing under unusual circumstances. The hospital, again, denies everything. But among Lagos locals, a legend grows. They say that sometimes late at night, you can see a figure in a patient gown standing by the hospital gates, barefoot, eyes vacant, waiting for morning rounds. They say if you call out to him, he turns slowly, smiles, and whispers your name. The line between science and silence is thinner than we think. What started as a disappearance became a warning, a story the hospitals will never officially tell. If you believe every mystery deserves to be seen, like this video, share it to keep the truth alive, and subscribe to join us for our next investigation, where the living and the lost may not be so different after all. Hospitals are supposed to heal, but sometimes they hide what hurts the most. After months of investigations, closed doors, and vanishing witnesses, we're left with more questions than answers. Emmanuel's family still lights a candle every year in front of LUTH. No body has been found, no report has been filed, and every attempt to reopen the case meets the same wall of silence. The records remain sealed. The staff who once spoke have long since disappeared or been reassigned. But still, rumors persist. Night guards whisper that sometimes, just before dawn, the hospital's lights flicker, and a figure in a patient gown walks the corridor, barefoot, pausing outside the neurology ward, then vanishes when approached. Maybe it's just imagination. Maybe it's guilt. Or maybe it's Emmanuel, reminding us that truth doesn't die just because it's buried. If this story shook you, if it reminded you that justice is only as strong as those who demand it, then stand with us. Like, share, and comment your thoughts below. Your voice keeps these stories alive. And for those who tried to silence them, we're still listening.